Hello and thanks for watching Palo Alto video training series. In this video, we're going to talk about security profiles and what they are and how we can create security profiles or customize them based on our requirements and use them in policies. There are different types of security profiles with Palo Alto Firewalls, like antivirus profile, anti-spyware profile, vulnerability profile, which is basically your IPS, URL filtering, file blocking, data filtering, and dust protection. We're going to quickly run through these different profiles and understand their operation and understand how they're going to work for us. So let's get started. First thing first, we just log into our firewall again. So again, on the top bar, we just click on objects, and you can see there are different types of security profiles on the left. So we have antivirus, anti-spyware, vulnerability, URL filtering, and so on. So let's start with antivirus profile. So as you can see, most of these profiles, they already have a default type of profile created that we could use, or we could create a new one with the add button right at the bottom. So it's totally up to you how you want to use it. We could create a new one, or we could use the default one. So if we just click on default profile, you can see there are a number of actions like alert, reset, and things like that has been defined on that default profile by default, and you could basically add virus exceptions and things like that in there as well. So by default, the default profiles are read-only, so you cannot change the default profiles. If you want to change the stuff in there, you have to create your own profile. So we just go ahead and create our own profile. We call it my virus profile and strict. And as you can see, there are a number of decoders, so the number of protocols or services that will be checked on the profile by default. So we could define what action firewall to take. So there are a number of different actions that you could choose. You could allow it, could just send an alert, you could drop it, you could reset the client or server, reset both. So you see by default it is reset both, reset both. So for IMAP, we just choose the same thing, and same thing for everything. So we just selected reset both for all of them. So if you want to send the samples to Wildfire, and then when you receive the Wildfire response, what to do, you could specify those ones as well. As I said, Wildfire is the cloud type of analytics for Palo Alto that they gather the files and samples and things like that in there and analyze it, and then based on that, obviously, we'll update the signatures or update the patches and things like that. So we just, again, as I said, if you want to create an exception, you could do that. Sometimes you might just wonder when you need to create a virus exception. If it's a virus doesn't, you don't really need to create an exception. But by default, Palo Alto will block a lot of things that it feels like they are virus. There might not be virus, and it will give them a threat ID. So you could just use that threat ID. If it is just a false positive and it's not a real virus, you could just use that threat ID to create an exception rule and make sure your firewall is not doing anything wrong. You could also create application exceptions. You could say for some specific applications, we don't really want to do virus scanning, for example, for Gmail or whatever. That's not our requirement now, so we just leave it as it is. So we created our profile, our first virus profile. You could do the same thing with anti-spyware profile. Again, we have our default profiles which are read-only, so you can change stuff in there. But we could go and create a new profile as well. So with the anti-spyware, you can see that the different severities, they have different type of action. And basically, with the anti-spyware, there are two different type of default profile, predefined profile. One is a strict, which is sending reset for everything. One is default, which is just creating and logging it, creating an alert and logging it. So again, we're going to use this anti-spyware profile. So you're not going to create a new one. Again, you could create exceptions if you want to, or you could create exceptions based on DNS if you want to. So we just leave it as it is. We're going to use the strict profile for anti-spyware here as well. Next one is the vulnerability protection. That's our basically IPS on Palo Alto Firewall. So you can see again we have default and strict. With the strict, you could say there are specific rules for the client, there are specific rules for the server side. So if it detects that there is a vulnerability on the client or there's a vulnerability on the server side, it will act differently. So if you click on this, you could see if it's a severity, high severity, critical severity, client side problem, it will send a reset to both. Same thing for server. So if this depends on the type of severity it is, it will act differently, your firewall. And again, you could create exceptions if you want to as well. So you could also add your own IPS profile in there as well. You have to add all these things manually. Usually it's not an easy task to create a IPS profile yourself. You could use a predefined one, or you could clone it if you want to. You could just create a clone, and then once you created the clone, you could start changing things in there. So you could just call it my strict IPS, and if you want to change the stuff in there or add new stuff in there, you could do all those kind of things. So next one is the URL filtering. URL filtering is obviously an important one. By default, you might want to block a lot of categories and things like that to make sure that users, they only access internet for business purposes, and there is no risk as well. So there is again a default URL filtering profile in there that you could just review, or you could create a new one. I'm going to create a new one myself. I just call it my URL profile. And if you have a blacklist or whitelist, you could add it in there. You could specify the action and specify the action for your blacklist. Sorry, you just say send an alert, continue, block it, or whatever. We don't really have any blacklist at the moment. We just choose categories like adult to be blocked, abuse drug to be blocked. Dating, we're gonna kind of send an alert, still let people disconnect if they want to. Gambling, we want to block it, and so on. So it's a couple of categories. So you get the idea. Basically, you could define or adjust the requirement for different categories. Palo Alto has the online analytics again that they can update these lists all the time and keep the categories up to date. So we just created the URL filtering as well. File blocking is the next one, and you could create a profile blocking. My file blocking profile again, and you could specify what type of files you want to block. I want to block executables, for example. Any application file type is going to be exe or batch, and so on. So I want to block these kind of files on my network. Click on OK. So we, forgot to change the action to block, right? And OK. So that will prevent people to download those kind of files or transfer those kind of files through Palo Alto Firewall. Next one that we want to talk about is the data filtering. You could have specific data patterns to be blocked on Palo Alto Firewall. This is specifically useful if you know what the pattern is. For example, you want to create a pattern for your credit card numbers, and you want to make sure that the credit card numbers are not being transferred over the internet or on through Palo Alto Firewalls. So you could just create a pattern of credit card number. These are regex numbers and stuff you could add in there. It's very specific. You need to know how the regex stuff works. You could create a regex for your credit card numbers and then use that data filtering profile to block people if they want to transfer credit card numbers over the internet link. So that's very, very useful. And DOS protection. So that's again an important one. You want to specify a DOS protection profile to make sure that people won't attack your servers or there won't be any SYN attack or DOS attack on your specific objects and policies on the firewall. So we just create my DOS profile, and you could specify SYN attack and what other things needs to happen. Basically, the thresholds and stuff you could specify for UDP again, and for ICP as well for ping and stuff like that. So all of those things you could specify and create your DOS profile. So that's your DOS profile. So once you created all of the profiles that you want, you could use these profiles on the policies that you are creating individually, or you could create a security profile group, which is a combination of different profiles that you want, and use that on your policies. For example, I want to use a strict antivirus and anti-spyware profile with the medium type of vulnerability protection and no URL filtering, and group them as one security profile, and no antivirus, no anti-spyware, and powerful IPS, and high URL filtering, for example, as a second security profile. So it's totally up to you how you want to create security profiles. We're just going to create one security profile. We call it my security profile again. Antivirus, we just choose the antivirus profile that we created, anti-spyware. Just use the strict one. We just use the IPS profile that we created. URL filtering again, the URL filtering that we created. File filtering, just use the file blocking profile that we created, and the data one. So we haven't created anything for data or wildfire, so we just leave them as none and click on OK. So you can see that we have a profile. You could play with all these different profiles and create a group of profiles when you want to, and then you could use that on your policies. So I'm just gonna commit all the changes that you've done. Again, you could just preview changes if you want, or validate them. I'm just going to go ahead and click on commit. We just give it a couple of seconds to commit the changes and apply the configuration. And once it's done, I'm just going to show you quickly. Again, I'm going to talk about this in the next video, but quickly, when we actually create the policy, if you go to Actions tab, you have a profile setting. So you could choose a group, or you could choose individual profiles based on your requirement. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I'll be with you soon again on the next video.